Peace and love, everyone. Welcome to my channel. If you are new, please like and subscribe. And happy Wednesday on this beautiful December 17th. And I hope all is well out there in social media and YouTube land. And thank you for joining. Tonight we're going to be decoding a film called Predator Badlands. And so I have to give you all a spoiler alert. Please, 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 if you haven't seen it and you plan on seeing it, then you do not want to watch this video until after you see it, because I don't want you to be I don't want any spoiler alerts. I don't want you to feel like you missed out on it or anything. So please, if you haven't seen it and you plan on seeing it, make sure you don't tune in tonight, because until later, because this is going to be a spoiler alert. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a deep dive into the topic. So the Predator Badlands film, I was waiting to see it when I first saw the trailer at the theater earlier this year. So I was waiting and waiting, and then when it came out, I started hearing a lot of negative comments from people and criticism, and then I was like, you know what, let me go see it for myself, and I highly encourage everybody to check it out. I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was a good film. A lot of folks compare it to the original, the first Predator movie in the series, and it's very different from that, and we have to keep that in mind when we see these Predator series, that each one is different. It's like it's stairs or different layers and levels to it, to learning about them. And so this one is very different, and different in the sense that in this one, the Yautja, or the Predator as what they're called, is the hero and the antagonist, and we not antagonist, protagonist, excuse me. And we're hearing about was just seeing everything through his eyes and his perspective, because it's, he's the main character in this one versus the others, which was slightly different. So I really thought it was a good film, and many films have the warrior's journey or the hero's journey as the theme, and this one has that as well, in a sense. So it's a very good film about the journey to prove his the main character's journey to prove his self-worth, and to earn respect and to earn acceptance, which were all the things that he was not receiving in the beginning. Okay, so the main character, the film opens up, main character is Deck, which is the a young Yautja, which is what they're called, and he is going through a test or a training ground, to develop his combat skills. And so he's being tested by his brother. And the test, I guess you got to learn how to be a predator or a warrior, whatever, in their culture. And so he's learning, and da 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 da. And the test that he was put through, didn't go so well, but there's always room for improvement. And so he decides that he wants to go another test, which is to go out somewhere and to fight a something powerful, because they have a code of honor that they live by, and you bring a trophy back. And with that, he'll be accepted into fully into the clan, because he's young, he's like a novice, and he's learning. So he chooses to go to another planet to kill a creature called a Calisk, which is considered unkillable, and it's extremely large and fearsome. And because of that, he's like, that's what I want to fight. That's going to be my trophy. Since no one else has been able to kill it, I will be that one, and I'll bring it home with honor. So, his brother, who is like, training him or preparing him, it's like a big brother figure named Quay. Tries to kind of discourage him on it, but he's determined he's going to do it anyway. So then the next thing, the dad shows up. And so we are seeing in this film that these beings have complex family systems. In this one, they're talking, they have a language, a spoken language. As previous ones, we didn't hear a lot of verbal exchange between them, or they were the lone sports hunter. So I guess they didn't have anybody they needed to talk to, but they did communicate through gestures in some of the previous films, sign language. So these ones are talking very, have a language, and their father shows up, who is a clan leader, and he is very different from his sons, I will say that. And he's had given the older brother an order to assassinate Deck, the main character, and he did not do that. And so the father was not pleased with that, and then ordered him to kill him on the spot, because he considered Deck weak. He considered Deck a runt and useless, because he is shorter than the average Yautja, which they're over 7 feet, and he's probably about 6 feet. But by their standards, that's short. And because he's not as skilled a fighter as some of the others, he felt that he was useless, a weak link in their clan, and needed to be eliminated. And his brother Quay insisted that he deserved the hunt. His brother was always rooting for him in this film. Although he has a small role, the father didn't care. And he gives his orders, and his orders need to be obeyed. And that the brother Quay chose to spare his life, and he had sacrificed his own for the protection of his brother. And his last words to him were to be brave. And so I really thought that part of the film was a little triggering, a little sad. Not going, I'm gonna admit that it was sad to see when the father arrived. Deck was very excited to see, well, not, I wouldn't say excited, he was eager to see him, and I guess he thought his father was coming to check to see how his training was going, and that clearly was not his purpose for that visit. And because when he discovered that his father, someone he looked up to and had honor for, because that's the leader of the clan, wanted him dead. This is the facial expressions, and not the facial, excuse me, his reaction was of hurt and bewilderment. And kudos to the people who made this film and how they conveyed these emotions in the characters, and the acting and the special effects were awesome, I think. So his brother spares him, but sends him away on his mission, tells him to be brave. And I thought that was very noble of him. His big brother had a reminded me of a let me think, what's the right word? His brother was courageous in the fact that he protected him. And I think in their culture, you're expected to obey clan leaders, and he chose not to. And he chose to protect Deck, and to give him a chance, and to help him sharpen and hone in on his combat skills. And he really wanted to see him be successful, which is why he encouraged him to have a hunt, and his first hunt, and why he sent him on the journey, knowing full well that when he disobeyed the father's order, what the outcome was going to be. But he fought the good fight, and he was very noble, very courageous, and trying to protect the little brother. And so you got to see that they have, feelings, and express emotions, and you don't really see that in the other films with them. You just see the raw brute force, and the calculating, and how fierce and determined they are as warriors, which we've been seeing up until this time. So the father's figure, the father, the who's a clan leader, he when we talk about decoding the film, he represents old traditions to me. He represents um the old way of doing things, the rigid, the brute, the um is my way or the highway kind of mentality, very old, outdated, traditional conditioning, not showing any feelings, not showing any consideration for anyone's feelings, and just giving orders and making unreasonable demands, which is what the father represented. And to me, Deck represented as someone that has the courage to create their own path, because once he escaped and landed on the other planet, which he came to hunt the callus, he pushed through his fear and frustration, and he set on his journey and on his mission, and he was determined to hunt the creature, and bring the trophy back, which they like to collect trophies, which, skulls, to show, the proof of their hunt. And he was determined he was going to do that. Although he landed, kind of crash landed on the planet, he still managed to gather his weapons and start strategizing his plan to find it. So he represents to me, creating his own path, and forging his own path, and not doing things exactly like the others had done. And the father represents the old traditions, the old way of doing things, and the Yautja code. And it can be brutal. Their code is they are friend to none, the prey of none, and they're the predator to all. And um these that code was kind of challenged by Deck a bit in the film, and so was his brother. So one of the things that I noticed in the film is that Deck was determined to uphold the code of the Yautja, even when he was facing so many adversities, and he ended up having to create friendships, if you will, with two other beings on the new planet. And their code was friend to none, and to only be loyal to their code. And he found himself in so many different compromising positions where he had to actually um, befriend these other beings, or develop some type of loyalty with them. His experiences with the father and all the things that he went through in the film, I think it taught him to stop being loyal. Well, not just him, also Thea too, the robot cyborg, I would call her, that he met on the planet. He met a robot that was um broken and had been left behind by her group. So they're both kind of like outcasts. One is has gone rogue, and was rejected for being a runt, if you will, or not as highly developed in their skills. And then the other one was a robot that was a cyborg. I'm sorry, I keep calling her a robot. She was like a cyborg, um, artificial intelligence, and they were there on a mission, um, from with other similar um, cyborgs, and they, she got destroyed and damaged and was kind of left behind, I think purposely. And they formed this unlikely bond, but they both had to learn, and they both learned to stop being loyal to a system that fails you and doesn't value you or see your true worth, because she was left behind, and Deck managed to find her, and she was separated from, her body had been separated from the upper part, from the lower part, when they were attacked by the Callus. And her twin cyborg also had been damaged in the attack on the planet by the Callus previously. And they were both her twin was repaired, but warned that she was deficient and was going to be discarded, and much like Thea had been discarded and was left out, hanging up in the woods or whatever, when Deck encountered her. But she still wanted to be loyal to that mission and loyal to her twin, who had a very different agenda, which we discovered later in the film. And Deck, the whole time, was there. He just had one way of seeing things, and that was much like the conditioning that he got, I guess, in his culture from his father. And he was like, I'm just here for one thing. I'm gonna get my trophy. I'm gonna kill the Callus. I'm gonna take it back home so I can join the clan. They'll accept me. That was it. He had no intentions of making any kind of meaningful relationships with anybody, or working with anyone, because remember, they see themselves as the friend to none and the predator to all. But he ended up seeing a very different approach. And we got somebody in the chat. Dia, yes, welcome. Good to see you. Saying yes, I can't wait to see this movie. Okay, well, I already gave out a spoiler alert, and it was in the title, spoiler alert. So if you still want to go see it, I'm just letting you know. I'm talking about different key elements of the plot of the film. So just gotta warn you, but I do still encourage you to go see it. But welcome this evening. So they both were, like I said, they were a very unlikely duo, a broken cyborg, and that can speak his language actually. And then this Yautja, who is on his young Yautja, who is on his journey. So the two of them come together and start working together, because she convinces him that she can help him, and she can be used as a tool to help him, because she's seen the Callus. Deck is a very courageous individual in the film, because despite his short stature, he is very fearless. If you notice in the movie, everything that comes near him to attack, he attacks. He goes into attack mode. He had absolutely no fear, which is very characteristic of the Yautja, which I admire. And he was very fearless, courageous. He took all challenges head on. He kept saying to her, you give up too easily. And he was not someone that gives up. And he just kept going for his goal. He kept going for his goal. Every time something happened and there was an obstacle or something in the road, he still got back on his mission. He was still dedicated and committed to his mission, and he had no fear. And for someone that was rejected by his clan, he definitely had very I would say it's very noble to be courageous, because he chose to go there to fight something that was considered unkillable. So for them to say that he's the weakest link, which I debate, this makes a good film, but he had lots of courage, because no one else he took on that journey. It wasn't an assignment given to him. He took it and accepted it, and he wanted to fight something to prove his worthiness and to prove how strong he was. And of course, forging his own path, making his own path. So he created a friendship, um and a bond also with a little creature that he encountered on the planet, that they nicknamed Bud, and which had a surprising origin. So Bud and Thea, the cyborg, and Deck become a trio and are helping each other. The little Bud showed up and rescued them and saved them from attack on some other creatures that tried to attack them, and everything on this planet is supersized. All the predatory creatures, they're all humongous, and they have so many different defenses. So it was a very dangerous journey, but Deck wasn't afraid, and he went to war with all of them. And he learned how to adapt in that environment, and how to use the environment around him to help him with his fighting skills, which is also commendable, because he observed what things were and how to use them as weapons, or how to use them um yeah, to his advantage, so that he could be this superior warrior, and he really was. um Thea taught him about loyalty, and she taught him that the greatest warrior on one she said one great warrior or predator on earth is the wolf, and the wolf is led by an alpha predator. I mean, an alpha wolf, and the alpha is not the one that does the most kills, which is what he thought, because that was his frame of reference. He was like, well, the alpha must be the best, the one that has the highest kill count. And she said, no, the alpha is the one that is the most loyal. So there was another theme in this film, not just the warrior's journey, but also the theme of loyalty, and being a real leader. A leader is one who is loyal. And so she taught him that, and brought that to his attention. And he kind of rejected that idea at first, but as time went on, he began to see and become aware that like his brother was loyal and protected him, that made him the kind of warrior, that in his mind that he wanted to be. It's not his brother could have made a different choice. He could have obeyed the father and assassinated Deck, but he chose not to do that. And he showed compassion and consideration for his younger brother, and was loyal to him above everything. And so that is a recurring theme in the movie, the sense of the virtue of loyalty. And Thea was also loyal to the mission and the company that she worked for, which was there to collect samples and experiment on the planet. And then she wanted to reconnect with her cyborg twin, which you could have called it a sister, but much to her dismay, the other cyborg, Tessa, who was also damaged in the attack and was being restored, did not have the same feelings towards her that she had. Tessa didn't have the same feelings towards Thea, who is one of the characters, major characters in it, as Thea had feelings towards Tessa, because Thea wanted to get back with and find her and continue their mission, although and she also wanted to protect Deck from harm. And Tessa did not care about any of that. She was strictly there for the mission she was programmed for, and that's all that she was concerned with. And anything else was expendable. And she kind of had similar rigid personality and beliefs like Deck's father. They almost kind of, mirrored each other, like very parallels in their personalities. Just have one way of seeing things, and very cold and very methodical. And anyway, so Thea reminded Deck that, not to leave Bud, the little creature, behind, because that little creature saved his life. And also, the little one was a very childlike and innocent, although it could defend itself. It had great defense mechanism, but it was I guess in its infant stage, or maybe its child stage in its development, and it looked up to Deck and tried to emulate Deck's behavior and imitate him and be like him and follow him around. So it was kind of like the little brother or little sister that he needed, and the creature looked up at him and for protection, and following him and imitating him, which was part of the, I guess, the comic or relief in the film. But it mirrored the relationship that he had with his brother Quay, because he looked up to his brother, who was always encouraging him. And then there's this little creature following him around, and it's kind of a similar relationship. But Deck is very fearless throughout the film, and he's mentally strong. And in the film, he accomplished something that no one else could, because he did actually fight the callous, and attempted to, unalive the callous. However, the callous has regenerative abilities, which was unusual, to say the least. But they kept fighting, and he fought the callus with every intention of, making it his trophy. However, as the film progressed, the callus became his ally, just like the little creature Bud became his ally. He saved his Bud. I think they referred to Bud as a she. So Bud saved Deck's life, and initially he wasn't interested, but as time went on, he began to protect and look out for Bud, because after all, Bud was protected him, and so he decided to be loyal to Bud. And then, because of his loyalty to Bud, they Bud marked him as similar to where animals mark their members of their pride or their herd, or their their clan or tribe or whatever. And they bonded, and then the callus in turn also became an ally to Deck, because it turned out that the callus and the little Bud were related. And so those two became great allies. And so this film was a lot like a a rite of passage for Deck in many ways. It was like a rite of passage into adulthood, into warriorhood, becoming a full Yautja. And part of this film, which is something that everyone has to go through when they're becoming a warrior, whether it's a spiritual warrior or physical warrior or whatever. Um, Part of your hero's journey, at some point, you have to be alone. You have to go it alone. You'll have guidance throughout life, um, to help you with all of the things that come with your way, with with any kind of obstacles. But ultimately, you are the one that has to make those hard, tough decisions, and you have to walk that path alone. Somebody may help you start the path, but you really have to walk the journey alone. And so that's what he was doing. um he was alone on that planet, didn't know a soul. And then as time went on, he met different beings and became allies to them. And he was there also while he was going through the grief and the loss of his brother and trying to process that. But he kept going. And even though he was alone, I'm sure he felt some kind of way because he witnessed, the brother's death, which, like I said, that was a sad part of the movie and a bit triggering. But he had to keep going, and he found the inner courage. That's why I said he was mentally strong, because he found the inner courage to keep going. He could have, just falling all apart, or just let it all go and just sacrificed himself, and not try to continue to gain recognition in his clan. But he chose his own path, and he decided to keep going and to keep pushing and keep persevering despite all the big obstacles, and they were big, that kept coming his way. And it was one after the other, and he never lost sight of his mission, and he never succumbed to feelings of defeat. He never succumbed to feelings of I would say he never surrendered and felt like, I can't do this, or is too much for me. He just kept going, and he kept um seeking a way. And he was very innovative. His character was very innovative. So although he was small and looked upon as insignificant, he had a very sharp, very brilliant mind, and he kept focused and very, he was determined to complete his mission, and he did. The mission had a different outcome than what he anticipated in the beginning, but he still accomplished his mission. And so this film's themes of loyalty, being your brother's keeper, being your sister's keeper, was very important. And it was a reoccurring theme in the film, which you will see. And it reminded me also of some parallels to, you know, um, other mythological stories, and stories about someone small facing something huge, and being successful or being victorious. So it's kind of like, the David and Goliath theme also in it, with Deck, and the different large obstacles that he faced, and he faced them with courage. Everything that seemed to maybe overpower him because of his size. He never used it as an excuse or allowed it to limit him, because in his mind, his mind was made up, and he accomplished everything he sought out to accomplish in this film. And he was very there were scenes where he expressed frustration, um and even in those moments, he didn't give up. He kept going. And so there was a lot of themes of courage and being your own hero and learning about a different type of leadership. His character, I felt he really developed as a character throughout the film, um, learning to live up to his own expectations, because, his father thought of him as weak, and he really wasn't. He really wasn't. And this whole experience and journey on the planet and seeking his trophy really showed him just how powerful he was, and and not giving up, and then seeking to do things solo. He always wanted to do things solo, but Bud changed all that for him, and he tried to prove to himself again and again, being worthy, um to call himself a Yautja in their culture, and to be worthy to a father who didn't value him. And he just kept taking on the challenges, and he was extremely intelligent, as I said. And I noticed that he was a problem solver, because there were several times in the film he was lacking something, and he found a way to cleverly compensate for it. I don't want to tell all the little nuggets, because I don't want, people who haven't seen it, or if you've seen it and you want to go see it again after you watch this, that's I recommend, seeing it again. Um, but not to tell the whole film, but he really, every time he needed something, he was very resourceful, and as a problem solver, he was able to find it or create it on his own. And so he was very resilient. He chose to go someplace totally unfamiliar to fight an unknown enemy. And that takes a lot of courage to do that. And he did that while he was grieving for his brother, and he did it alone. He chose this to be this sole hunter in an unknown territory. You don't know your defenses, you don't know the defenses of the prey that you're hunting, and he didn't know what weaknesses it had, which is very important when it comes to combat. But he didn't care about any of that. He was just going forward, and he was going after it. And so and then he ended up being an ally to it. So that was pretty amazing. And not only did he become an ally, he joined forces with a callus, because Bud turned out to be a callus, and now this unstoppable, unkillable, regenerative being is a part of his clan. Um, he was, what else was exciting about that movie? Deck's path, Deck was creating his own destiny also in this film. So he represented the person that is strong enough to create your own path, and he created his own destiny. And how the movie ended kind of gives you a hint that there may be a sequel, perhaps. But I would like to see, what he does next. It would have been nice, nice to see that, because he created um a whole different um destiny for himself. And not only that, just the things that he did that led to how the film ended. That was something that is like not acceptable, nor is it is not acceptable, nor is it, I guess, expected or ever happened perhaps before in their culture. And so he was a trailblazer on many levels, not only because he went to capture and unalive the callus, which was something that many of them had tried to do and none of them did it. And he was successful in that, in a sense. But I would say he was beyond successful in it because he became an ally to a being that was being hunted, that is considered unkillable. So, and then he becomes a part of their clan. So that's just a whole nother dimension of the story of the film. But he did a great job when it came to creating his own path. Make he went there as a predator, but he became a protector, and he learned how to create and live by a code of his own new rules. Um, Although he had a meaningful relationship, a meaningful bond, I would say, with Bud, who turned out to be a callus, but it was a mutual bond between them because they formed their own like their own clan, if you will. And he learned not to value beings for their size, but for their loyalty, and that is what bonded him with the cat with Bud and the cyborg Thea, because of the loyalty that they had between the three of them. And I thought that was a really important film, especially at a time like this, because acceptance is something that many of us could really, really, it's something that everybody needs, being accepted and valued for who you are and your character and not your outer appearance. So I thought that was really important that he chose loyalty over killing. So Quay and Deck, there was a situation there where he also chose loyalty instead of, taking his brother's life. Deck, when he bonded with the callus, he chose loyalty. And when they rubbed their foreheads together and he became a part of her clan instead of taking her life. And then when Deck and Bud first met, they there was a time when they could have ended each other, but they chose not to. So throughout the film, loyalty over unaliving kept coming up again and again. Each of the three main characters in the film were alone on the planet, and being alone while they had different issues they were going through, they managed to look past those issues, and they came together and they were useful to one another, comforting in a sense to one another, and helpful as they created their bond and their loyalty, because each of them was missing someone, whether it was their brother or their parent or body parts. There was a sense of loss or aloneness or needing help, needing protection or something, and that bonded them together. um and he went from Deck went throughout the film, we watched him go from a predator to a protector, no longer just a sports hunter, but protecting his clan and being loyal to them and keeping them safe. um I think that he that made him a real leader as he chose his own destiny. And This film was the first, like I said earlier, of its kind. What we saw the Yautja from a different lens, where they had emotions and feelings and the ability to bond, like who knew, and the family systems and everything. So we saw so many different aspects of them. And I think this film is really telling you that, you know, when life gives you the short end of the stick, when someone gives you the short end of the stick, you take that stick and you make it, you make it your staff. Or when life throws you lemons, life gives you lemons, rather, I say take down that whole lemon tree, make limeade instead. If when someone throws you to the wolves, you start leading the pack. And that's what one of the main themes and the main message in that film was, how Deck kept going, persevering and going through all these difficult challenges that probably would have ended any ordinary being, but he kept going, and he owned them. I mean, he took full command and full control of each situation that he found himself in, and he was able to escape and keep persevering and keep, building his skills and becoming stronger, um more powerful internally and externally. So I thought that was really a great film, and demonstrating that message, and that, despite what comes our way, we are not powerless, and we can keep going. And whatever hardships or um challenges come our way, it's okay to feel upset for a while, but don't let it defeat you, and don't let it, let the feelings come, let them pass over, release them, and then you just keep going and keep persevering. And that's what he did. And he was made some very courageous, powerful, and noble moves at the end of the film. But I want you all to see it and tell me what you think in the comments. I want to hear the what you liked about it. Tell me, share with me what you liked about it the most. And I hope to do some more of these decoding series. This is the first one I've done on a live, and I plan to do that with some other films in the near future. But with that said, I hope you all enjoyed it. Share with me in the comments what you liked about it, and I look forward to talking with you all next time. I'm exploring, different genres on this channel. And so, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's live. I look forward to speaking with you all very soon. And in this holiday season, I hope everyone has a beautiful holiday, whether you celebrate whichever holiday you celebrate during this time. And while you're preparing for the winter solstice as well, use this time to spread love, peace, and joy and happiness throughout the planet. And I look forward to our next meeting. Peace, love, abundance, good health, and happiness to everyone.